The new NVIDIA RTX 3070 is here, which can only mean one thing. It's time to build an insane gaming PC build, today in a small form factor, with Cooler Master's new, hugely popular NR200p. I'll also be testing this system later on with 15 of the most popular titles, so you can see exactly how it performs. Let's do this. As always, I'm going to kick things off by installing as many components into our motherboard as possible today. This is a teeny tiny little motherboard from Asus, specifically the ROG Strix B550i. Now this is a feature-packed ITX motherboard. It's got Wi-Fi and USB-C built in, an M.2 slot on both the top of the motherboard and underneath on the rear of the motherboard, as well as loads of front panel headers and everything we could possibly need for our build today. I'm going to be coupling it with our CPU choice, the AMD Ryzen 5 3600X. This is a great match for the new 3070 cards, and while AMD have got some new Ryzen 5000 chips coming pretty soon, they're quite pricey, so we'll have to see how they stack up first of all. We're going to pull back the clip on our CPU socket, and we're just going to slot the CPU into place, lining up the gold triangle on the processor with the triangle on our socket. The arm is going to pop nicely back down, which moves us nicely on to our RAM today. Now, specifically, this is a 32GB kit of Crucial's Ballistic Elite. It's got a 3600 MHz clock speed, which is pretty good for a Ryzen CPU. We're going to pull back the clips on both of the DIMMs at the top of our motherboard today, before lining the notch on the DIMM slot with the corresponding notch on our motherboard. Finally then, the last thing we can do to our motherboard is install the M.2 NVMe SSD. Now this is the Seagate Firecuda 520. It's one of the fastest drives on the market with read and write speeds in the region of 5 gigabytes per second. That is unreal. It's a Gen 4 SSD as well, which is going to take advantage of all that extra bandwidth. With the teeny tiny screwdriver at the ready, on the teeny tiny motherboard today, we're just going to remove the pre-installed heatsink cover, as well as removing the screw on top of the standoff that's now been revealed underneath. This drive's actually got a customized Seagate controller on it, which allows it to run actually cool enough to not need its own heatsink. But of course our motherboard's got one today, so that's a little bit of a bonus. Now then, we're going to move the motherboard assembly, as we call it, into our case today. Now this is the Cooler Master NR200p. I'm going to be pairing it with our power supply choice today, which is a 650 watt SFX Gold unit from Cooler Master. It's a pretty new release, and its small form factor is great for a really tiny case like this one. The first thing you want to do with any case, regardless of its size, is basically take off as many of the panels as possible. There we go, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. Now that's going to make our case super easy to work with, especially when everything is quite so compact. Before we screw in the motherboard, normally we need to make sure that there's standoffs installed under each of the holes, but because there's only 4 holes on the motherboard today, everything is all nicely done for us. Don't forget as well to install the I/O shield before you put the motherboard in the case. We're just going to clip that in corner by corner. There we go, and then slide our motherboard into place. With the motherboard in, I've spun the case around, and we just need to remove these 2 screws at the back of the chassis. That's going to let us remove the power supply holder and get the PSU installed. Look at that. That is such a cute little power supply. Look at that. Now then, in terms of the modular cables that you're going to need to plug in, it's a simple case of a 24-pin motherboard power connector, a 4+4 pin CPU power cable, and then finally a 6+2 pin PCIe power cable. And that's pretty much it today. An interesting note about this case as well, because of where the power supply is mounted, they pre-run an extension cable, so we need to plug that in and make sure the power supply switch is set to 1 because we won't be able to access it from outside the case. Okay then, the motherboard and the CPU power connectors are now installed. The only things I'm going to do before we go and install the CPU cooler is just plug up the 3 front panel connectors. That includes the HD audio, which goes to the bottom left of the motherboard, the USB 3 cable, which goes to the right-hand side of the motherboard. I had to check for a second there. And then finally, our front panel cables, which are really handily pre-organized, so we can just plug them in one block, rather than fiddling about with individual connectors. Nice one, Cooler Master. All right then, the build is starting to come together, and we've actually only got 2 more components left to install. This, the CPU cooler today, and then finally the 3070 graphics card. Now this is a 240ml all-in-one liquid cooler from Cooler Master, which, believe it or not, is gonna fit in our case today. The radiator is going to sit along the bottom of the chassis down here and actually help to cool the whole system today. There's just lots of bits. Let's put most of these to one side and first focus on installing the water block onto our CPU today. In order to do this, you need to make sure that you've got the back plate with the solid side at the rear of the motherboard, with these little silver posts installed on each corner. That's going to slide through the back of the motherboard only when we've removed the pre-installed mounting hardware. And then these little posts are going to screw through into that backplate assembly we sorted out just a moment ago. And then we can just go ahead and use these large kind of screws to fasten the radiator into place. Okay then, it's finally now time to install our graphics card today. This is of course the brand new RTX 3070 Founders Edition. It's actually quite a compact card, it fits perfectly within the kind of 2-slot form factor, has this quite sleek backplate design and a similar aesthetic as the 3080 and 3090 cards, but without the throughput cooler design. It's a 1440p beast, as you're going to see very shortly in the gaming benchmarks today, and I think it looks really quite good. I'll link this with all the other components in the description below for up-to-date pricing and availability, and I really do hope this doesn't have the same stock issues as the 3080, but honestly, I've got no idea what's going to happen at the minute. We need to remove the 2 screws here on our vertical GPU mount, and we're also going to pop in this really sleek included PCIe riser cable to our PCIe slot. It's kind of buried down here. There we have it, just like so. We've got to do a bit of hand yoga to actually screw this in, otherwise it's just gonna fall out. Now, with the glass side panel on, that looks really, really good. The RGB fans as well should illuminate the case so we can see it a little bit better. But I think there's only one way to see how this thing looks, and later on how it performs in 15 of the most popular titles. And that's to roll the montage. Alright then, now you've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, let's dive in and see exactly how it performs in 15 of the most popular latest AAA titles. Starting off with Death Stranding here at 1440p high settings with DLSS set to performance mode, which of course renders the game at a low resolution and uses Nvidia's AI upscaling tech to bring it up to 1440p. You're seeing 138 FPS on average, with 131 and 127 for the 90 and 99th percentile results. GTA 5 is a similarly impressive story. 1440p high settings with our render bars set to around about halfway and anti-aliasing at 4 or 8 times, you're looking at 124 on average in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, meaning yes, you can go back and compare this video against all my other builds in GTA 5 to get a really even performance picture. Control is a really impressive game on the RTX radar, here at 1440p Ultra with DLSS on and RTX enabled. You're looking at 109 FPS on average, with 98 and 90 for the 90th and 99th percentile results. The game looks great, super realistic, and it goes without saying. No lag, no stuttering, no screen tearing, nothing of the kind. Apex Legends is next up today, of course not a ray tracing title, but a really popular battle royale. Here you're looking at 143 FPS on average, which is really impressive, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 132 and 123 respectively. Call of Duty's Warzone is next up, the second of the 3 Battle Royale titles today, and here you're looking at 117 FPS on average, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 98 and 82 respectively. Of course, Call of Duty's free Warzone Battle Royale mode doesn't itself support ray tracing, so there's no point in enabling it. It's only actually the campaign in the game. Forza Horizon 4 is a personal favourite of mine, which is probably the only reason it's on the list today. Drop a like if you like Forza Horizon 4. Here you're looking at 149 FPS on average, with 90 and 99th percentiles of 147 and 140, meaning the game never really went below 140 FPS, more than double what you'll get from a racing game on even the latest next generation consoles. Overwatch is another personal favourite of mine. I know we've got some big Overwatch fans on the channel, and here you won't be disappointed. 168 frames per second on average, with 146 FPS and 129 FPS for the 90 and 99th percentile results. That's really impressive from Overwatch, and the game looked fantastic. CSGO is next, and that looked as good as like a 10-year-old game can possibly look, with 289 FPS on average at 4K high settings. You are not going to be disappointed. There, esports plus level frame rates at 4K pretty much maxed out, which is pretty mind-blowing, to be honest with you. Battlefield 5 is a similarly positive story. 1440p high with RTX disabled and DLSS enabled saw 123 FPS on average. I did test out the 3070 with ray tracing on in Battlefield 5 in a recent build video, which you can check out in the cards, but basically you lose about 40-50 FPS on average, so I like to keep it off for Battlefield 5. Next up is Minecraft RTX, the Minecraft for Windows 10 beta. Here with ray tracing and DLSS enabled, you're looking at an average of 63 FPS, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 47 and 44. Given the huge open world game environment for Minecraft, I'd recommend not actually using the beta, at least until they optimise it just a little bit more. But to kind of prove the principle, the game looks great, and ray tracing really adds a nice Minecraft dynamic. Doom Eternal is another game on the list today. They just keep on coming. Here at 1440p Nightmare, not Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, you see an 160 FPS on average, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 144 and 133. Rainbow Six Siege is one of the final games on my list today, just 3 more to go. Here I use the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode to really test its muscle, and that once again means you can compare my other builds and get apples for apples comparisons. Here you're looking 297 FPS on average, and the frame rate with the 90 and 99th percentile results of 259 and 227 always stayed above the 200 mark, which is pretty crazy. Another game where the frame rate stayed above 200 at pretty much all times was Valorant. Here the game looked great, really good visual experience. Those CSGO-like dynamics are proving predictably very popular. 245 FPS on average, and you can't complain at that. Finally then, the last game on my list today is a bit of Fortnite. Who doesn't love a little bit of Fortnite? Here with ray tracing disabled first of all, but DLSS set to performance, which gives us the free frame rate by rendering the game at a low resolution, and then upscaling back up to 1440p. You're looking 212 FPS with NVIDIA's lag busting reflex technology enabled, with 90 and 99th percentiles of 190 and 180. Really impressive in Fortnite there. Ray tracing enabled does have a big performance hit for Fortnite, 71 FPS on average to be precise, going down to a minimum of kind of 50 frames per second. Once again, I think it really depends what you're after. You competitive gamers out there are going to want the reflex 212 FPS, but if you want a great visual experience that's still very playable, then ray tracing enabled is going to be the one for you. Either way though, regardless of your ray tracing preference, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, a big old like rating, and make sure to get subscribed for more from me. Thank you very much for watching. As always though, I do appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.